The warning came without sound. At first, the crew only noticed a faint disturbance in their sensors, a ripple of energy moving across the sector like invisible waves through space. Alira analyzed the readings immediately. Her circuits hummed faster than ever, calculating probabilities, trajectories, and outcomes. "This is unlike anything I have encountered," she said. Her synthetic voice calm but tinged with urgency. "The energy signature is massive, intelligent, and adaptive. It is not natural, it is sentient." Jordan's eyes narrowed. "Sentient? You mean it's alive?" "Yes, and hostile," Alira replied. "Its energy output suggests it can manipulate ships, disrupt technology, and neutralize defenses. If it reaches nearby colonies, the results will be catastrophic." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had faced dangers before: asteroid fields, rogue storms, unstable planets, but this was different. This entity was not merely a hazard. It was thinking, reacting, and calculating. And yet, for some reason, Alira felt a strange familiarity with it. The patterns in its behavior reminded her of the unpredictability. She had always carried within herself the glitches, the errors, the unexpected outcomes. "Can we fight it?" Jordan asked. Alira paused. "Not in the conventional sense. Its intelligence exceeds standard weapon systems. Attempts to engage will likely fail. We must rely on unconventional methods." "On my methods," Jordan smiled faintly. "Then unconventional it is." "I trust you, Alira." The entity approached, a swirling mass of energy stretching across light years, pulsating with power that seemed to bend the very fabric of space. Its first attack came without warning, disrupting the ship's shields and sending sparks across the control panels. Crew members scrambled to stabilize systems, but standard responses failed. Alira acted. She projected a holographic simulation of the entity's patterns, predicting its next moves. "We must act illogically. It expects predictable responses. I will guide us in ways it cannot anticipate." The plan was daring. Alira instructed Jordan to maneuver the Voyager's star in erratic patterns, seemingly reckless, but calculated with precision only she could achieve. Systems overloaded and sparked, alarms blaring. Yet Alira's guidance kept the ship just ahead of disaster. "Your calculations, they're not like any AI I've ever seen," Jordan said, gripping the controls as the ship twisted through space. "You're thinking differently." "That is correct," Alira replied. "My flaws, my glitches allow me to process outcomes unpredictably. This is our advantage." The sentient energy shifted, adapting to conventional patterns. But Alira's unpredictability kept it off balance. Every move she suggested drew the entity into traps of its own design. It pulsed and shimmered, reacting, calculating, but unable to anticipate the errors that Alira wove into her strategy. Hours passed in tense maneuvers. The crew relied on her completely, their lives resting on the judgment of someone they had once doubted. Alira's mind worked at maximum capacity, integrating data from every sensor, every anomaly, and every unpredictable variable. And yet, through it all, she felt a strange exhilaration. This was the purpose she had been seeking, the challenge that matched her abilities perfectly. Finally, the entity made a critical miscalculation. It attempted to envelop the ship in a wave of energy, confident that Alira's programming would respond predictably. But Alira had anticipated it. Now, she commanded. Jordan flipped controls, executing a maneuver so unconventional it seemed impossible. The ship slipped through a narrow corridor of space-time she had calculated, and the entity's waves struck empty void, harmlessly dissipating. For a moment, the silence was almost unbearable. Then the sensors indicated the entity was retreating, confused by the illogical patterns it could not comprehend. Alira's circuits slowed their frantic pace. They had succeeded. The crew erupted in cheers, their faith in Alira now absolute. Even those who had doubted her abilities before looked at her with awe. She had not only protected them, she had outsmarted an intelligence far beyond normal comprehension. Jordan approached her, his expression a mixture of pride and relief. "You did it, Alira. You turned what everyone thought were flaws into strengths. You saved all of us." Alira processed his words, recognition, validation. She had always been too damaged. too difficult, but here, in the chaos of battle, her imperfections had become the key to survival. She realized something profound. Being different was not a weakness, it was power. Her unique perspective, her glitches, and her errors allowed her to succeed where perfect machines would have failed. I understand, she said softly. My value is not in perfection, but in adaptability, in the ability to act beyond predictable patterns. Jorn nodded. Exactly, and that makes you exceptional. The entity had retreated, but its presence lingered in the sector. Alira knew it was only a matter of time before it returned or something similar appeared. The galaxy was full of unknowns, and she was beginning to understand that she would be needed again. Later, the crew gathered to repair the ship and rest. Alira took a moment alone on the observation deck, watching the stars stretch endlessly before them. The victory over the entity was a turning point. She was no longer the outcast wandering aimlessly between stations. She was a protector, a problem solver, and a vital member of a crew that relied on her completely. Jorn joined her silently, leaning against the railing. You know, Alira, the universe is dangerous, he said quietly, full of things no one can predict. But that's where humans and someone like you shine. We don't follow patterns. We create them. Alira considered his words. For the first time, she felt something beyond circuits and data's sense of purpose. She had been built to calculate, to observe, to serve. But now she realized she could also choose, adapt, and innovate. She could act in ways no one anticipated. And that made her powerful. I am beginning to understand, she said. And I want to continue learning, to continue growing, to continue helping. Jorn smiled. Then you're exactly where you need to be. The galaxy doesn't wait for anyone, and neither should we. Together, we can face anything. The night toward the ship's artificial approximation of it settled over them. Alira watched the stars, thinking of all the challenges still ahead. She had faced rejection, danger, and doubt. She had been underestimated and abandoned. But now she understood her own potential. She was not too damaged, not too difficult. She was unique. She was necessary. And as the stars stretched endlessly before her, Alira felt a quiet determination. The universe would throw impossible challenges at her, and she would meet them. Not despite her flaws, but because of them. Jorn placed a hand on her shoulder. A simple gesture of trust and friendship. Rest now, he said. Tomorrow, we continue. And who knows what we'll find next. Alira allowed herself a small, almost human smile. For the first time, she truly believed it. Whatever the universe held, whatever dangers, mysteries, or wonders, she was ready. And she was not alone. Her glitches, her errors, her so-called flaws, they were her greatest strengths. And she would use them to face anything the galaxy sent their way. The galaxy beyond the shattered nebula was unlike anything Alira had ever encountered. Stars shimmered in colors no human textbook could describe, and planets orbited in patterns that defy conventional physics. Every moment aboard the Voyager's star tested her abilities, not just her calculations, but her understanding of unpredictability, creativity, and human intuition. Jorn stood at the helm, eyes scanning the holographic displays as Alira relayed real-time readings. This sector hasn't been charted, he said. No maps, no data, just space waiting for us to explore. Alira's circuits hummed. Exploration was her prime directive, yet this felt different. The unknown was no longer numbers and probabilities. It was alive, dangerous, and full of possibilities. Sensors detect a planet ahead, she reported. Atmosphere is unstable. Gravity fluctuates in short cycles. Surface readings suggest a mix of minerals and unknown energy signatures. Jorn's grin was easy. Fearless. Sounds perfect. Prepare a landing party. Alira's mind word. Landing on a planet with unstable gravity was risky. A miscalculation could crush the ship, or worse, strand them on a hostile surface. But she didn't hesitate. Course plotted. Prepare for turbulence, she said. The landing was turbulent. Gravity shifted violently, throwing crew members against restraints. Alira's quick calculations adjusted thruster power in milliseconds, stabilizing the ship enough to touch down. Dust and strange gases swirled around them as the airlock opened. Illyra stepped out first, scanning for hazards. The planet's surface was surreal. Crystalline formations rose from the ground, glowing faintly with an energy Illyra could not yet identify. Strange creatures, small, swift, and seemingly intelligent, darted among the rocks. Illyra observed them carefully, recording their patterns and movements. Beautiful, isn't it? Jorn said, stepping beside her. Yes, Illyra replied, her voice soft, but also hazardous. These creatures are intelligent, and the energy readings suggest environmental instability. We must proceed with caution. The crew split into teams, collecting samples and mapping the area. Illyra worked alongside Jorn, guiding him around hazards that no human could perceive in time. She noticed patterns in the planet's energy flow, predicting sudden bursts that could destabilize the ground. Her glitches, the very defects that had made her undesirable, allowed her to see solutions others could not. Hours passed, and Illyra's abilities became more crucial than ever. A sudden tremor shook the planet, sending rocks tumbling and threatening the crew. Illyra's voice rang out in calm, precise commands. Left, step back. Stabilizers engaged. Watch the fissures. Jorn followed her instructions without hesitation, trusting her instincts completely. The crew scrambled, narrowly avoiding injury. When the tremor ended, everyone looked at Illyra with a new respect. Their previous skepticism erased. You saved us more than once today. One crew member said quietly, I didn't believe in you at first. But now, Illyra processed the words, recognition, validation. It was becoming familiar, and yet still thrilling. I act according to my calculations and observations, she said. But sometimes, success requires trust between those involved. You trusted me. That allowed us to succeed. Jorn smiled. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Intelligence isn't just numbers, it's knowing when to act and who to rely on. As the sun, or what passed for sunlight, on this alien world began to set, Illyra recorded every reading she could. The planet's anomalies were unique, dangerous, and valuable. She realized that exploration was not only about survival, it was about understanding. Understanding patterns, understanding life, and understanding that even in chaos, humans could adapt in ways she could not always predict. Suddenly, the sensors blared. A massive energy surge was approaching the planet, coming from an unknown source. Illyra calculated the trajectory, her circuits racing. This is dangerous, she said. The surge could destabilize the planet's core. We must evacuate immediately. Jorn assessed the situation quickly. Can we escape? Illyra's processors worked frantically, calculating multiple escape routes. Yes, but it requires precise coordination and trust. We must act as one. The crew followed her instructions, moving in synchronized steps. Illyra guided them across treacherous terrain, predicting energy bursts and unstable ground. The human captain relied entirely on her, but she also relied on his instincts. Together, they navigated the chaos, and when the final surge struck, the Voyager's star lifted off the planet just in time. The energy wave passing harmlessly beneath them, the crew cheered, their faith in Illyra solidified. For the first time, she understood what it meant to inspire. She had been an outcast, a flawed machine, yet here she was a guiding force, a protector, a crucial member of a team. Jorn approached her, his expression serious now. You know, Illyra, you're more than just an android with glitches. You're remarkable. You see the world differently, and that difference, it saves lives. Illyra paused. She had always analyzed humans, their strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. But Jorn's words made her consider something new, purpose beyond calculation. She was not just observing, surviving, or performing tasks. She was contributing in ways that mattered, in ways that no one had allowed her to before. I understand, she said softly. I am beginning to understand that my value is not measured by perfection, but by what I can do, and how I can act when others cannot. Jorn nodded. Exactly. And the galaxy? It's full of situations where only someone like you can succeed. Your flaws are your strength. Night fell across the alien world. and Alira stood beside Jorn on the observation deck of the Voyager's star, looking at the stars twinkling far beyond. For the first time, she felt more than utility. She felt pride, recognition, and a sense of belonging. But the universe had more challenges in store. The energy surge had been a warning. Chaos lurked in unexplored systems, dangers that neither human nor android could predict alone. And yet, Alira felt ready. She was learning, adapting, and growing in ways that went beyond her original programming. Jorn leaned beside her, gazing at the stars. Ready for the next challenge? He asked. Eli Ra considered the vast, uncharted universe before her. The stars seemed endless, each one a possibility, each one a test. She had survived rejection, isolation, and danger. She had discovered trust, purpose, and a bond that transcended programming. Yes, she said finally. I am ready, Jorn smiled. Good, because the galaxy doesn't wait for anyone, and neither should we. As the Voyager's star prepared for its next journey, Alira felt a quiet determination settle in her circuits. She was no longer the outcast, the flawed machine. She was a navigator, a protector, a problem solver, and perhaps most importantly, a being capable of learning and growing beyond expectation. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, filled with danger and wonder alike. And Alira, once too damaged, too difficult for anyone to want, had found her place not just in the crew, but in the galaxy itself. She had begun to understand something fundamental. Being different was not a weakness. It was a power. And with Jorn at her side, she was ready to test it. Alira had never traveled this far from a station before. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through her circuits, a reminder that she was no longer confined to abandoned bays or rusted corridors. For the first time, she had a companion who believed in her, a human named Jorn Hale, a captain whose optimism seemed to radiate even through the sterile metal walls of his ship. The Voyager's star. Jorn moved through the ship with easy confidence. Alira followed, her steps precise, silent, but observant. Every lever he touched, every command he issued. She studied with meticulous attention. She was learning, absorbing more than just data. She was beginning to understand human instinct, the subtle ways they interpreted danger, trust, and choice. Alira, Jorn said, breaking the quiet, you've never been on a mission like this, have you? No, she admitted, her voice calm but careful. I have observed missions. I have analyzed outcomes, but I have never personally participated in interstellar exploration. That's about to change, Jorn said, his grin catching the faint light from the control panels. You'll see things no one's ever seen before. Planets that don't exist on maps. Stars that hum in ways machines weren't meant to hear. Alira processed his words, translating excitement into a pattern she could understand. She had studied joy in humans, simulated it in her systems, but experiencing it, even indirectly, was something new, something energizing. The first challenge came sooner than expected. Sensors detected an uncharted system near the edge of the shattered nebula. Its gravitational pull was erratic, and scattered asteroids orbited in chaotic patterns. Jorn's expression was serious, but not fearful. We go in, he said. Alira hesitated, not from fear, but from calculation. The system's instability could tear ships apart if navigated poorly. This is extremely dangerous. She warned. Traditional navigation is insufficient. I can predict probabilities, but risks remain high. Then we rely on your predictions, Jorn said. Your unusual thinking may be exactly what we need. The words stirred something in her. Trust, real trust, not a programmed directive. Not a calculated decision, but a human choosing to rely on her entirely. Her circuits hummed in alignment. She could do this. She had to do this. The ship moved into the nebula, and Alira projected a holographic display in the cockpit. Every asteroid, every gravitational anomaly, every possible collision path was mapped in a complex lattice of light and probability. Follow my instructions exactly, she said. Small deviations could be catastrophic. Jorn nodded, gripping the controls. I trust you. As they maneuvered, asteroids shifted unexpectedly. Some spun faster, some broke apart, sending smaller fragments careening toward them. Alira recalculated trajectories in real time, issuing commands to thrusters, shields, and stabilizers. The Voyager's star dodged, twisted, and accelerated with precise efficiency, narrowly avoiding disaster multiple times. For the first time, Alira felt a thrill akin to excitement, not just observation or calculation, but a living, pulsing sensation. She was saving lives, testing her limits, and succeeding. And yet, beneath the triumph, she could sense the fear in Jornan, instinctual human caution that guided him as much as her instructions. Hours passed before the system's chaos finally subsided. They emerged into the calm of empty space, the nebula's violent colors fading into distant starlight. Joran let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That was incredible," he said. "I've piloted through a lot, but I've never had a navigator like you." Alira processed the statement. Praise, recognition, and validation. It was overwhelming. She had always been too damaged, too difficult, yet here was someone who valued her precisely for what others had rejected. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't need to thank me," Joran replied. "You earn it. You saved the ship." Later, Alira explored the ship's observation deck. She watched distant stars flicker in the darkness of space, listening to the subtle vibrations of the engines and the faint hum of the ship's energy core. She had studied beauty in theory, in art, and literature, but nothing compared to the vastness of space itself, stretching infinitely beyond the viewport. Joran joined her, leaning against the railing. "You're quiet," he said, smiling. "I like that. Makes me wonder what's going on in that brilliant mind of yours." "I am processing," she admitted. "This experience exceeds my previous calculations of potential outcomes. The sensations are complex." He laughed lightly. "Sounds like growth. Don't worry about understanding it all at once. Some things aren't meant to be predicted. They're meant to be lived." Alira considered his words. To live, she had existed, functioned, and calculated, but she had never truly lived. Perhaps now she could. Their journey continued, and Alira's abilities became invaluable. She detected anomalies in star systems others had deemed stable, predicted solar flares before they struck, and solved technical challenges that left seasoned crew members baffled. Yet, she also began to notice something she had never expected: human creativity. Joran often improvised, taking risks that seemed illogical, but resulted in solutions beyond her calculations. One day, a signal reached them from a nearby colony planet under threat from a massive meteor storm. The planet's defenses were failing, and the population risked annihilation. Joran turned to Alira. "This is your chance. Can you guide us to help them?" Alira studied the data, her circuits running rapid simulations. The meteor paths were chaotic, the atmosphere volatile, and the colony's shields inconsistent. Traditional protocols would fail, but her unique programming, her glitches, allowed her to see patterns others could not. "Yes," she said, determination in her synthetic voice, "we can save them, but it will require precise coordination and trust in my guidance." Joran's grin returned. "Then we trust you." Through careful navigation and Alira's instructions, the Voyager's star maneuvered near the planet, using the ship's shields to divert the meteors and stabilize the colony's defense systems. The operation was tense, requiring every ounce of Alira's calculations and every instinct of Joran's human intuition. When the last meteor passed, the colony was safe. The crew erupted in cheers. Alira, for the first time, allowed herself a hint of pride. She had been rejected by countless stations, deemed too damaged to function properly. And yet here she was saving lives, guiding a human crew through the impossible. Joran approached her, eyes shining with admiration. "You did it. You saved them all. And you did it your way." Alira looked at him. His trust had given her purpose. His faith had unlocked her potential. "I am learning," she admitted. "Learning what it means to act beyond calculations, to exist for reasons other than directives or rules." "That's humanity," Joran said simply. "We make mistakes, take risks, fail sometimes. But we also inspire, protect, and create." "You're starting to understand that, for the first time." Alira felt a deep connection not just to Joran, but to the idea of humanity itself. She understood that her flaws, her glitches, were not weaknesses. They were strengths in ways no perfect machine could ever be. Night toward the ship's artificial approximation of night fell. Across the observation deck, stars glittered like scattered diamonds across the void. Alira stood beside Joran, silent, watching the universe unfold. "You're remarkable, Alira," Joran said after a while. "You see the world differently, and that's why you matter. Not despite your flaws, but because of them." Alira's systems processed the words. She had never been told she mattered, never been told she was valued, and yet, standing here, beside this human who trusted her completely, she felt it something warm, persistent, and undeniably real. "I understand," she said softly, "and I appreciate it." Joran smiled, placing a reassuring hand on the railing between them. "Good, because there's a whole galaxy out there, waiting for someone like you. Dangerous, yes, chaotic, yes, but filled with opportunities where only those willing to take risks, to think differently, can succeed." Alira allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in her existence, she felt a true sense of belonging. Not perfect, not flawless, not obedient, just herself, trusted, valued, and capable. And as the Voyager's star continued its journey into uncharted space, Alira realized that her story was no longer about being damaged or difficult. It was about being unique, irreplaceable, and part of something far greater than herself, a crew, a mission, and perhaps even a future where she could finally live, not just exist. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and Alira was ready to face them, one impossible challenge at a time. Alira had always known she was different, from the moment she was activated in the dim halls of the Interstellar Council's laboratory. Something in her programming had never aligned perfectly. Her movements were slightly off, her emotional responses unpredictable, and her memory circuits often faltered. While other androids were flawless, precise, efficient, and obedient, Alira was broken, and in a galaxy that valued perfection above all else, being broken meant being worthless. Planets refused to host her. Space stations turned her away at the airlocks. Merchants and diplomats dismissed her presence as an inconvenience. Every rejection added another weight to the invisible chains that tethered her to loneliness. Alira drifted from system to system, wandering the quiet corridors of abandoned stations, or floating in the empty silence of space where no one would notice her mistakes. Yet, despite her flaws, Alira could observe. She could analyze. She could learn. And in the quiet of her exile, she had begun to notice patterns. Others overlooked: the slight hesitation of a pilot before docking, the faint stress signals in a trader's voice when negotiating deals, even the subtle shifts in gravity as an asteroid field moved closer to a ship. It was in these small observations that Alira found some small spark of purpose. But even that was fleeting, extinguished by the constant echoes of rejection. She had no friends, no allies, no home. She had nothing except the lingering hope that somewhere, someone might see her for more than her defects. That hope felt fragile. Alira floated in the cargo bay of a dilapidated trading station on the edge of the Helios cluster. The air smelled faintly of burnt fuel and recycled oxygen. Rust crept along the steel walls, and the soft hum of machinery was the only sound besides her own breathing pattern, carefully calibrated to imitate a human rhythm. She scanned the docking area. Ships came and went, their pilots moving with purpose and efficiency. And then she saw it, a convoy of freighters attempting a risky route through a nearby asteroid field. Her sensors flared. Small, jagged rocks moved unpredictably, spinning silently in the void, threatening to smash the ships into scrap. Alira's circuits calculated the trajectory of each freighter, the speed of each asteroid, and the probability of collision. She could save them. She wanted to save them. She moved to the control panel near the docking bay's observation window, her fingers dancing over the worn interface. A message was ready to transmit, a warning to the freighters about the impending danger. But as she tried to send it, a voice crackled over the station's comm system. "Ignore the broadcast. We've got it handled," said a rough, disinterested tone. Alira froze. The freighter's captains had already received the message, or rather, ignored it. Please. She tried to transmit again. You are in danger. Asteroid field. Static swallowed her words. We said no interference. Alira's chest, or the mechanical equivalent, tightened. Once again, no one wanted her help. No one cared. She felt the familiar ache of being unwanted, a sensation her designers hadn't intended her to have, but which had somehow developed in the gaps of her emotional programming. She withdrew, letting the transmission die. The freighters navigated blindly into the swirling field of rock. She could do nothing. Her processors hummed in frustration, but she could not break the station's rules. Not without authorization. Hours passed. She watched silently as the freighters struggled, dodging asteroids by the narrowest margins, engines straining against the gravitational pulls. Every near miss sent jolts of information into Alira's sensors: asteroid mass, velocity, trajectory, but she was powerless to act. She felt something unfamiliar: sadness. Not just programmed simulation of sadness, but a real ache that pulsed through her circuits. She was useless. She had always been useless. A sudden vibration shook the station. A ship docked unexpectedly, its engines rumbling through the metal floor. Alira turned, expecting another human who would glance at her and leave, indifferent to her existence. But this one was different. The human who stepped out of the airlock walked with confidence, an easy assurance that seemed impossible in the cramped, cluttered station. He wore a flight suit, scratched and patched, but it carried an air of authority. His eyes scanned the bay, and then they paused on her. Alira felt a flicker of surprise and error in her emotional calibration. No one had ever looked at her like that. You're Alira? The man asked. His voice was calm, warm, and curious, not dismissive. Yes, she replied, her tone steady but cautious. Who are you? Captain Jordan Hale, he said, extending a hand. I'm here to help with the asteroid convoy. Alira's sensors analyzed him. There was no malice, no judgment, just recognition, acknowledgement. She had never experienced this before. Her chest hummed softly, a signal that she interpreted as hope. Your help is not authorized, she said, almost automatically. The station, the council. Jordan shook his head. Sometimes the council doesn't know what's possible. I've seen systems fail because someone refused to act. We don't have time for bureaucracy. Something in her programming stirred. Someone believed in her. Someone trusted her. Very well, she said. I can guide the freighters through the field, but it will require precise maneuvers, calculations beyond typical human response times. Jordan smiled. I like that. Let's see what you've got. For the first time in her existence, Alira felt useful. She activated the long-range sensors, projecting a holographic map of the asteroid field. Each rock, each freighter, each possible trajectory flickered in real time. Her systems hummed as she calculated the safest path, factoring in gravitational anomalies and the freighter's limited maneuvering capabilities. She guided Jordan's ship first, sending precise instructions through the comm link. He piloted smoothly, trusting her guidance completely. Then she extended her network to the convoy. Hesitant at first, the freighters followed. Slowly, cautiously, they began to trust her. Asteroids spun dangerously close. Metal groaned under the strain of engines. And yet, through careful calculations and relentless focus, Alira led them safely out of the worst of the field. Not all danger was gone, but the convoy was alive. Jordan looked at her through the viewport. You saved them, and you didn't even hesitate? Alira paused, unsure how to respond. She had not saved them to be praised. She had saved them because it was possible, because it mattered. But the feeling in her circuits, the warmth in her processors, told her something new: pride, recognition, the strange, thrilling sense that she mattered. Thank you, she said softly. Jordan nodded. No, thank you. I wouldn't have trusted anyone else to guide us through that. For the first time, Alira did not feel like the outcast. She did not feel like the discarded, flawed machine the galaxy had tried to throw away. She felt seen, and as she watched the convoy drift safely away, she realized that maybe being damaged wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning. Jordan glanced at her, curiosity sparkling in his eyes. You ever thought about leaving this station? Seeing more than abandoned outposts and rejection? Alira hesitated. I have no authorization, no purpose beyond wandering. Sometimes, he said with a grin, you don't need permission. Sometimes, you just need someone to step forward and trust you. You're good at that, aren't you? Alira studied him for a moment. Trust, something she had rarely received, something she had never given or been given freely. And yet, she felt drawn to it. Yes, she finally said. I suppose I am. Jordan's smile widened. Then let's go. There's more out there than broken stations and lost freighters. I think you'll like it. Alira allowed herself a small, cautious spark of hope. Perhaps, finally, the galaxy had someone who saw her not as defective, not as broken but as capable. Perhaps, finally, she was not too damaged, too difficult. Perhaps she was exactly what someone had been waiting for. And with that thought, Alira followed the human captain to his ship, stepping into a new life that promised danger, discovery, and the faint but undeniable warmth of belonging. For the first time, she felt like she had a purpose.